Cronin Finalist Webinar Series. Each year, NASPO hosts the Cronin Awards for Procurement Excellence, honoring innovation and excellence in state procurement. The awards program seeks to recognize outstanding procurement initiatives and serves as a means to disseminate and to encourage adoption of breakthrough initiatives by other states. Submissions for the awards are scored based on 4 important criteria: innovation, transferability, service improvement, and cost reduction. By excelling in these key areas, Cronin awardees and finalists help create opportunities for improving the procurement function nationwide. This webinar series is an important part of sharing information and ideas for professionals across the country. And again, I thank everybody for joining us today. Just a couple of reminders before we get things started. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on NASPO's website and YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Because we are recording, I have muted everyone's phone lines, and we will have a question and answer time at the very end of this webinar. At that time, if you have any questions, you can unmute your phone by dialing *6, or you can type the questions in the chat box at the bottom right hand of your screen, and I'll be happy to ask those for you. For those of you that would like to receive UPPCC certification credit for attending this webinar, please email me, Kevin Miner, at the conclusion so I can send you that certification. My email is on the screen, but again, it's kminer@naspo.org. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Christine Spieth, Deputy CIO Business Integration for the Department of Administrative Services with the State of Georgia, will be presenting the finalist Cronin webinar submission, State of Georgia, Amazon Business and Team Georgia Marketplace. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our use of Amazon and Team Georgia Marketplace today. So I wanted to start off a little bit about why we did this. Back about 3 years ago, we were seeing millions of dollars of spend through our spend analytics tool that was being spent at Amazon for buying open market type things. We also noted a large volume of Amazon Prime accounts were being purchased. And it really made the advent of these e-commerce sites, whether they're Amazon or Walmart or whatever, makes it fairly easy for staff around agencies to go ahead and purchase things without any guidance or oversight from the procurement staff. So for years now, we've had statewide contracts and catalogs for the goods that are under statewide contract available through our ERP system, so that users could go in and select the items off a catalog, put it in a cart, take the requisition through an approval process and to a PO and dispatch it, and the buyers around the state were involved in that process. But if you think about it, for open market spend and with all the avenues available today to people, Amazon and other like sites allow users to pretty much buy things, get them shipped to wherever, and doesn't really interact with the people who know the procurement rules of the state and know what's under statewide contract or not. So because of that, we decided to look into moving Amazon Business into our marketplace so our shoppers had one place to go and that we could drive people across the state to find the items both on statewide contract and off of statewide contract. You know, it's nearly impossible to have a statewide contract for every type of item that all of the diverse agencies are going to be using over the course of the years. And often there's just small items that they need to buy for different needs, different programs, and that process was being done a lot outside of our systems. We were capturing data through P-card spend, but it often doesn't give you the kind of detail you need to see what's being spent. And the bigger issue we saw all along was that we give these buyers all these state policies and code that they need to follow as far as what's procured for the state, but their doors were kind of opening up wide to the user communities for them to go shop wherever they wanted to, get the items shipped the next day, and not really interact with the procurement staff at all. Our site does allow our users to go in and with one cart select items from both on statewide contract and without. Outside of the statewide contract, we put it into one cart so that we don't have to make them understand any concepts of what's in the statewide contract, et cetera. We do include the same approval workflows we do for the statewide contract items so that there's visibility not only from procurement but other people within the organization who want to see those items as they are before they're purchased rather than after. And certainly one of the cost savings here was the elimination of all those Prime accounts, because we are able to get Prime-like functionality through Amazon Business without the cost of a Prime. So I wanted to just quickly go over how it works and kind of explain it just in a kind of a flow so that it makes sense as to how we do things. And this is the exact same flow we use whether an item is on statewide contract or not. But in this case, the user logs into PeopleSoft Financials. We have just under 4,000 requesters, as we refer to them here, in the state's instance of PeopleSoft. These are the folks who can tell you about their needs. What do I need for you to buy? So they log into PeopleSoft and they create a requisition and name the requisition, and then select an option that lets them go out to our catalog application. We do host our catalogs with a tool, with the tools provided by Jagger. It used to be called SciQuest, but it's Jagger, and it allows us to have really three types of catalogs. Punch-outs, which I hope everybody's familiar with. Those are catalogs that are hosted by the supplier themselves, and we're going out to their site to get the goods and services and bring them back into our carts. We have hosted catalogs. Those are ones that we're hosting through our Jagger instance itself. They're all hosted in our cloud application. If a change needs to be made, it's done with some oversight as far as approving any changes to pricing or items that are included in those catalogs. And then we have something we call self-hosted here, which is just a way we've stood up some smaller catalogs for some statewide contract suppliers that we wanted to make sure had visibility when people search in our marketplace, but they didn't have the wherewithal to create a catalog themselves. So when a user selects catalog to punch out to this site, they are certainly see mostly the statewide contract catalogs, but then they also have an option, if they don't find it under statewide contract, to select the Amazon site, which is a punch-out. In the site itself, then, they can find the 5 or 6 items perhaps that they want that are under a statewide contract, and then they can go to the Amazon site and add the X number of items that were not under contract that they need as well, and put that into one cart. And that process is important to us because we don't want to bother the approvers of this process with separate requisitions for every supplier that the user finds an item they want to purchase from. So it's one cart that gets moved into one requisitions for the approval process. Along the way, if they are in Amazon, they do get warnings. We have curated the items because Amazon has over 2 million business suppliers in their marketplace. And of course, there are some things that will overlap with our statewide contracts. So if it is a mandatory statewide contract, we curate the item, meaning that in Amazon's technology, it puts up warnings 3 times through the process that tells the user the item may be under statewide contract and to please get advice from their procurement person before proceeding. We do let them purchase the item or put the item in the cart really and get it into a requisition because remember the process does include the buyer being able to see these items and they can do a final correction on the requisition before it's staged to a purchase order. So, and there are times, a couple of things about that. The curation is at a high-level category level. So there are things that, for example, if you curate at office supplies, our office supply contract doesn't necessarily include every office supply that you can find out on Amazon. So the warning is there to allow them to buy items that are not on statewide contract, but to remind them there is a statewide contract for office supplies. So once they go through the process and create the cart, they select a return button to go back to our requisition tool, which then creates the requisition, and once they submit it, it sends it through our approval workflow. So what our approval workflow is about, and it can vary by agency, but minimally we recommend to agencies that the first person who approves it generally is the manager of that resource, to make sure they're okay with them buying these goods. In some agencies, the preferred approach is they have the budget people look at the items first to make sure there's budget for it. So that's sometimes a variance for the different agencies. Once the budget person or the manager approves, then it moves to step 2, which is, again, the reverse of that. We have most agencies doing a minimum of 2 approvals, but there are certainly examples, especially if the funds that they are going to use are grant funds, where the grant owner might be brought in as an approval person, or some other person in the organization, perhaps someone in IT, to approve something that's being purchased that's an IT product. So that process then completes, and the final step in it is it queues up for the agency's defined resource who is going to take those requisitions. They are the trained procurement staff within the organization. They are the ones who have had the training as to what the procurement policy and law is within the state of Georgia, and they're the ones that look at the items. They can edit the line, take items out, and go back with that cart and add things from the statewide contract if they know that the contract is available for that item at a reduced price. That then, once they finish their edits and they've approved it, the normal purchase order process occurs, which is it dispatches to the PO gets created, and it dispatches out through our SideQuest or our Jaeger application, again, electronically, in this case, back out to Amazon. The final step in this process is to kind of tie everything up with a bow, which is that every night we take all of our P-card transactions that have occurred the previous day, and we load them into our ERP system, which is PeopleSoft. When those transactions come in, we use some tools to auto-reconcile them against the purchase order. If it doesn't auto-reconcile, which sometimes it won't if you ordered 6 and they sent 5, or if the price changed for some reason, then the user would manually reconcile it, add the receipt they've received from Amazon, and complete the whole that process so that the transactions then are staged into our voucher payment every month at the end of whatever the schedule is for each agency to pay their Bank of America bill. So we really create a whole history of who approved this open market purchase, who wanted the open market purchase, who approved the open market purchase, and then when it went out to the vendor, that the goods were received and the payment was made. And that is important to us because we can, the bottom bullet on this slide talks about the controlled ship-to locations. One of the big challenges with e-commerce today is you can ship things anywhere, which is a good thing, but it's also can be a thing that lends itself to fraud. So by working this process through our ERP system and managing the ship-tos by the controlled ship-to locations we keep in our ERP system, we can control where everything is being shipped, rather than allowing for, the occasional person who thinks, well, maybe that would be better in my home. So it does allow us to kind of put more controls over the whole process. So with Amazon Business, there are over 2 million vendors. With a lot of them have business-exclusive merchandise and pricing that you won't find on the Amazon consumer side where you get the Prime account. You do get Prime-like functions. There are numerous to list, but the big one that everybody was looking for was free shipping and 2-day delivery. And so you can get that with a purchase of $49 or more. And one of the things that was important to us and that we worked with Amazon on, we merge our users. So if you remember early on, I said we had a large number of Amazon Prime accounts that we saw that had been paid for. At the time, those accounts were $99. I believe they've gone up to $119 now. But when our users come in from our ERP system, they're logging into PeopleSoft. They're going to the requisition selection on the menu. And when they select the item to punch out to our catalog site, we pass their information over to Amazon. When we do that, Amazon uses the email that's associated with the ERP account to look up to see if that person has an Amazon Prime account. And if they do, it merges that account. So now that account becomes the Amazon business account. The Prime account no longer exists, and all shopping then happens through this site. If they never created an Amazon Prime account, then it just goes through and creates their account. The first time they do log in, they have to give some information, including the card number that they're going to be using for their purchases. Right now, we have Amazon set up to only use purchasing cards, but in the future, we are working with them on an invoice process for areas that don't necessarily want to use cards. So the login, then once that happens and they've set up a profile, then they're good to go every time they come out to Amazon to purchase more. We have currently about 815 users that punch out from our system to Amazon. That is less. We have about, like I said, about 3,800 different requesters, but not all of them have the need at this point to use Amazon. So we do monitor it a little bit and see, who's using it and what they're using it for. Another key point for this is if we were able to set up the tax exemption set up for state purchases at the parent level, which is the state of Georgia's DOAS account, rather than each agency having to go through that process. So it does help to encourage agencies to do that because it saves them work. It's one of the things we use to help to nudge agencies to focus on using Amazon this way. And I mentioned the controlled ship-to locations so that we don't have an incidence where things are being shipped somewhere where they shouldn't be. So our benefits and why we see this as a positive, why we see this as something that helps our community. If I go back historically and mention again that we've been working since 2009 to make sure our user communities had access to everything that was on statewide contract. But if you look at the total spend in the state, there's a lot of spend that occurs outside of statewide contract just because it's and it's not necessarily rogue or maverick spend. It's things that they need that aren't under statewide contract. So in the previous setup, we had them going one place to do statewide contract work. They certainly could go in and we're required to do a requisition for non-contract items that they were going to be purchasing, but that process required them to type everything in manually and tell what each item was, what the quantity was, what the price was, et cetera, et cetera. So it made it a lot more work for requesters and buyers to get the items that weren't on statewide contract. So our driver for this was to give them ease of purchase, just like we were trying to do with our statewide contract side. And also, it's kind of ironic, but we were putting most of the controls in originally over spend that was on statewide contract, which can be kind of an unlimited spend. I mean, you can buy most of, anything off a statewide contract because it's already been competitively bid for any dollar amount. But the things that had to follow the open market spend rules under the no bid limits and all of that, that was kind of free range, and there really weren't a lot of controls around it. And control might be a strong word, but it's more about being able to have the visibility into it, to letting people know up front what's being purchased versus having someone find out after the fact that so-and-so bought a large number of widgets that you were planning to use the budget for something else for. So our goal with this was to help the different entities get more control over this kind of spend too. We do get a lot of detailed spend data. If you're familiar with P-card data, there's two levels of data that you can see when you're getting data from your bank. One is just level 1 data, which tells you she bought something at Walmart. Here's the address of the Walmart, and here's the amount it was. But there's also some vendors who provide you with level 3 data, which gives you exactly what was purchased. That's happening more and more, but it's not 100%, and there's a lot of data that comes in that just tells you somebody bought something somewhere. By doing this open market spend through Amazon, we get very detailed, granular reporting of exactly what people shopped for, what they purchased, where the purchase was for, and it does help in analytics to understand, where the spend is now being focused at, and is that something that should be a statewide contract focus in the future. Certainly one of the other things I don't think the state of Georgia is unique in, there are times, especially with P-cards, that there's opportunity for fraud. We've had it happen here. I think I've heard it happen at other spots. I've talked to other people about it. But by being able to put this into the site where we have some internal controls in place, and we create the situation where it makes it much more difficult to buy something using the state's P-card, ship it to a location that's not the state, or even bring something into the state and take it home, because there's kind of a path all the way along here that, an invoice wasn't just paid and nobody doesn't know what it is, but we did buy those X number of widgets. They were shipped. We did get them. We did pay for them, and they should be here. So that's certainly a way to help to reduce the number of opportunities for fraud. And we think one of the single most powerful tools in that is the controlled ship-to locations. And then, of course, one of the big benefits is, $99 is not a lot of money, but when you multiply that over a large number of agencies and a large number of users, it's money that doesn't need to be spent to get free shipping, when we can do it through this kind of a tool and get the free shipping in the Prime-like features without the cost. So what's next? We've been live on Amazon in the marketplace since January of 2017. We have been working with Amazon in improving some things so that, for example, when I talk about the approval workflow, that process can take anywhere from a day to 10 days sometimes. And so Amazon, especially some of the vendors in there, have fairly fast-changing prices. And we were having an issue with the price changes coming back once you did dispatch the PO, that the price that it was at, X number of days ago didn't match the price now of the item through Amazon. and so there would have to be change orders and corrections, and it causes extra work. So what we did with Amazon is we got price locking for 7 days, and that has eliminated the problem completely. What that basically does is they've locked the price so it doesn't go up during that time on any particular item, so that it has time to work its way through the approval process, especially if somebody's not available at a point in time, so that they don't have to go back and make a change in any way. So we're also working with them on being able to limit or minimize the number of emails that go out to our user communities. Of course, Amazon likes to market. We all see it. If anybody's got an Amazon account or a Prime account, I'm pretty sure you're used to Amazon sending you items that you might be interested in because you've bought other items of the same type. We're working with them that while we certainly may want those to go to some users with a special interest, we don't want that to go to every one of our requesters, so we're working with them to see if we can have that turned off. We're also just engaging with them on a project to get small businesses and disadvantaged businesses or credentialed businesses into noted for Georgia, noted in the system, so they can be promoted in the search when appropriate. So, for example, if it's a Georgia-based small business, they have the tools now at the state level to define what does this Georgia-based small business mean to us, and then allow us to put that credential on a business so that when one of our agencies are searching for some good or item, they can be promoted to the top of the list so that we are encouraged, especially for some purchases, to buy local if possible. It's not a requirement, but it is a preferred, and there are certainly a lot of purchasing staff within agencies who bring this up, that they do want to be able to use the small businesses in their area if it's available. So we're working with Amazon not only to take the small businesses that are already there and promote them, but also to bring on other businesses that our buyers work with that would make it easy for them to go do their open market spend in that way, rather than to have to do separate processes for each of them. So that's just kicked off recently. We are resource that works with our suppliers across the state has working on the project and hopes to have something in place in the next few months with that. The other thing we're working on with them is an invoice process for agencies who have really put some controls on their P cards and don't want them used as freely as they have been in the past, and have limits on their P card usage. So we're looking at turning on a P card process, an invoice process, which would allow the user to go in and make the purchases, but instead of it being paid for on dispensing of the item from Amazon, it would be the traditional invoice process would be received, and then payment would occur that way. We are trying to encourage Amazon at this point. It is turned on at the business unit level, and we would prefer to give options. For example, there might be some P card users within the same agency who you would want to use a P card, and others who don't have one or would prefer to just do the invoicing. So we'd like it more of a toggle, I want to do it this way versus that way, versus it being business unit wide. So we are working with them to see if we can change that process a little. So we are also looking to work with some of our agencies, one or two, to pilot this in the near term so that we can see how effective it is and if it's something we want to turn on for everyone. And with that, I think I'll open it up to questions. I do want to stress that this is not, open market spend is not necessarily a contract, right? Open market spend generally is what we're targeting is the spend below our no bid threshold, which for the state of Georgia is $25,000. So if it's not on contract and if it's not a mandatory contract, resources around the state can purchase up to $25,000 without going through a bid process. So there's plenty of opportunity there to purchase. If you look at our Amazon purchases, they're not huge. They're $100, $200, sometimes $50 purchases versus, $1,000 purchases and so on. But I did want to stress this is not a statewide contract. We did not, we work with the terms and conditions that are of using Amazon's marketplace. This is, again, just to solve the open market spend issue versus trying to make this a statewide contract at this point. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right. Well, I've got a question. Is there anything that you think that you or your team may have done differently throughout the process, ranging all the way from development to the implementation?
Well, this certainly was a learning curve for us, and I will tell you that we started to decide to go forward with this back in the early fall of 2016. We actually kicked this project off in October of 2016, and we had all of it working, tested, and ready to go to turn on in production by December. We held until after the first of the year to go live because we just didn't want the complication of people not paying attention during holiday season. So I think one of the things that it was a learning curve for us, we did get a lot of support in doing this through Amazon. They were available to us whenever we needed. And it was really, it sounds good, but when you go in there, you go, oh, there's like advertising for credit cards. We can't have that, so you had to work with them and say, can we get that taken off? We don't want to advertise that. Or, the whole process to bring our users in and merge their accounts. It was all a learning process that we didn't know even if we did specifications up front of like what we were going to do, we didn't think about these things because it was somewhat new territory for us. So I think what we would do differently, it's hard to describe because honestly we didn't know what we didn't know up front, but we certainly did at the points where we discovered something, took time to stop, do a kind of a design walkthrough, a session where we talked these things through, we whiteboarded and figured out, okay, that's the way we're going to go with that then. So it was more learn as we go and not necessarily be as well prepared as you would hope when we first started out with this.
But so you're saying, especially on Amazon's side, just being more modular, right? And being able to customize.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, Amazon does provide you with a lot of options. I think you really have to take your time to make sure you did understand how that worked. And there was no better way to do that than to actually just get it up in a test site and just work through it and see what you would see then, because it doesn't always click when you talk about it until you're in there and creating your 15th cart and you go, oh, wait, that's going to be an issue. So we really allowed ourselves that time to kind of do that iterative process and determine what would work for us. We were the first state that put this into our marketplace, so Amazon did make some team members very available to us so that, when we had questions or we needed to walk and talk through something, they were readily available to us to make sure we understood what that meant. And we did a lot of testing of, buying a lot of items, fake items, and shipping and sending them all the way through our system so we could make sure we understood what was going to happen on our side.
Now, Chris, is there a step-by-step manual available that could assist other states in doing the same thing?
Not from us, but Amazon, I don't know if they have a manual, but they certainly provide you with the steps, what's going to happen. One other thing is that in using the applications from Jagger, part of our contract gives us the resources that help us with enablements for catalogs. And so that they provide the resource and the technology to help us make that punch-out work, make the data come back and forth between our ERP system and the punched-out supplier system or our hosted, whatever type of catalog it is. So they were certainly also a player in this. The way we've set this up may not be the same way another state would do it, because you may be using the ability to go punch out to a vendor's catalog site directly from your ERP system rather than the model that we have. So in that case, you would be working with Amazon directly to do that. We did work with Amazon, but we also had our third-party team from Jagger working with us as well to make sure that not only that we were pulling cart items back from Amazon into our requisitions, but that when the purchase orders dispatched, they electronically seamlessly went into Amazon's tools. So it will be a little different from each site, depending on how you use catalogs, if you use a tool or if you do the enablements yourself where you're setting up the communications back and forth between the vendor and your ERP system.
Interesting. Do you have any advice for states that may be trying to do something similar?
Yeah, I think the thing about it is to, well, certainly one of the things we ran into is that I don't know that it was completely understood when we first started this process, that our way of communicating may have been too technical and not enough making sure people understood what we were talking about. So certainly I would make sure that you have your business goals aligned and you understand what you want to achieve with this. In this case, we were really trying to achieve the ease of use for our user communities and also put more controls around that open market spend. But you may have other reasons. So one of the things that I manage a group of business analysts here, that one of the things I always challenge them with is to test what their outcome was against the original business goal. Does that really meet that need? Does that really do what we originally intended it to do? And if not, is it because it's better? And if it is, that's okay. But if it's not, we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get there. And so, I would make sure that first, it's not just something somebody puts out there, but that you really understand why you want to do it and what's going to nudge your users into wanting to do it here rather than going out and buying another Prime account and doing their spend that way. And I will tell you, there are certainly people out there that are still kind of doing it on the back side. We didn't mandate this. We kind of used the behavioral economics approach of nudging people. What's in it for me? Why is this better for me? And certainly that's how we got to over 800 users, not by saying you must now do it this way, which is preferred. You want to get them to get in there and use it because of the value or the benefit to them.
Absolutely. We just had another question come in. Is there any thought about expanding the use of Amazon beyond just a marketplace use application? The reason that they're asking this is it seems like Amazon could almost single-handedly replace a number of commodity contracts in some of the elements, such as the advertising, were considered for government applications. So is there any way that you can expand it beyond just marketplace?
It certainly could work. That actually isn't my area of decision making. The state purchasing officers really, it's theirs to decide how they want to handle going forward. I do understand that I think it's U.S. Communities now has a contract with Amazon to use in place of some of your statewide contracts. And, I get back to discussions we've had here that e-commerce is really changing the way shopping occurs in this world, and that, the days of, working with the local Staples even and having them fill up a box and ship it or whatever are long gone. It's now a distribution center that gets it to you, even if though there's a Staples down the street. And that's evolving to more and more online, less and less brick and mortar approaches to shopping. So it's certainly, and the other discussion is that if you're in a marketplace that has over 2 million vendors, you have to do something to make sure you get purchased from once in a while, which generally is not only quality of item and good rating, but it's also your price. So, for the future, does that mean that there's enough competition out there to get the prices down to make it used more for total purchasing rather than, for just open market spend? I'm not the procurement person and responsible here, so those are decisions, I think, long-term that everybody's going to be faced with as you've got your communities of people in all of your agencies and authorities and stuff who have more and more access to buying things themselves rather than buying things through the procurement staff within their organization.
Very interesting. Yeah, you mentioned had the large amount of vendors. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on how the vendor community responds to something like this?
I guess which the vendor community within Amazon or
Yeah.
vendors?
Yeah, or outside of it if it affected them.
Yeah, I really can't speak to that. Again, we have somebody here who does work with our vendor communities, and that would be an interesting question to see what kinds of reactions they did. State of Georgia had a procurement conference a couple of months ago, and there were a lot of vendors, suppliers invited to it. I would have to leave that to her to describe or discuss how the vendors' comments or reactions were to this. Certainly, I would imagine that a statewide contract vendor would be concerned if they think it's going to impact spend against their items. But the honest fact about this is, if you're letting people go out to all these other sites to buy things, there's a really good chance they're going to buy statewide contract items. Because again, the people at the state of Georgia who get trained on procurement policy and procurement rules are the purchasing staff within each agency. Everybody in all of the different divisions, organizations, they don't really know the rules that well, or if at all. So this hopefully actually helps to drive more people to shop in one place and get their statewide contract spend as well as non-contract spend in one location, and helps them to understand, oh wait, when I did my search, our catalog tool has a search and an advanced search engine, and it can bring things up and say, no, your statewide contract vendor X provides this. And then if you don't find it, then you can click the open market button, and it goes to Amazon. But first, you're going to search and see, what can I get from my statewide contract? So this gives us those kinds of nudges to the user communities that they never had before. We see people going out to the site for our office supplies vendor, and they go directly out to their website for purchases. And when you talk with them about it, they will say, well, there's only this many things on statewide contract, and I need these other 5 things, it's more efficient for me to go once and buy everything than to go into our site and buy the things that are on statewide contract and then go out to the vendor site to buy the rest of the stuff. And so, you know, in trying to look at ways to make the user experience easier, faster, and also help them to focus on or follow the rules that are in place, we're trying to break down the barriers. We're trying to say, you know, here's everything together. Here's where you can shop. Here's where we can help you to shop for the things you should shop off a statewide contract. Here's the things that you can get if they weren't on statewide contract.
Awesome. What are the fees to the state of Georgia?
There aren't any fees. You mean from Amazon?
Yes.
Yeah, no, there's no fees. They worked with us, implemented it, and we don't have any charges or anything. Amazon's business model is it does charge suppliers a monthly fee plus a, I think it's a fee for item that's sold or something. It actually varies depending on what kind of program a supplier signs up for, how much support they want from Amazon.
All right. Does the state of Georgia have an administrative fee?
We do for statewide contracts, but we do not for this because it's open market. So there is no administrative fee from Amazon for items purchased.
Interesting. Interesting. A lot of forethought put into something like this too. It seems we might have another question coming in. Can you explain Georgia's bid limits?
So Georgia has a no bid limit, meaning you can purchase items up to $25,000 from a particular vendor without going out to bid. So if you're looking for some type of widget, you know, and you're buying it for less than $25,000, you don't have to do a RFQ or anything for it. The same thing with services. If the services is going to stay under that $25,000 limit, then you can go ahead and purchase it without going out to bid. So, and as I mentioned, a lot of the Amazon spend is very small dollar, buying things that are, you know, different things that a different agency would need depending on what their business is for, and it aligns itself with that kind of shopping. It's not, you know, going out to buy 5 tractors or something like that, which is under statewide contract. But anyway, so that's the rule here. That was changed about, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, that it went from $5,000 to $25,000. That's under on the code now.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Chris? Okay. Well, hearing none, seeing none, I will go ahead and start to wrap this up. We'll wrap up about 10 minutes early. Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I just thank everyone for inviting me today. Hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Yeah. We're very happy to have you, and Chris, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. For everyone that attended, remember to email me, Kevin, at kminer@naspo.org if you'd like to receive your certification credit for attending today's webinar. I will be posting this recording of this webinar to NASPO's YouTube channel in the next couple of days. If you would like that, you can find it on there or email me and I can get it to you. You can share this with your colleagues and those that were not able to attend today. If you have any questions, Again, feel free to reach out to me directly at my email address. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us, and I hope they have a wonderful rest of the day.